Yeah, so that'll be, I leave Wednesday, and then I come back Friday night. And then the following week, I go to Florida to drive my parents' car back here.
Oh.
They come home for the summer. And then the following weekend, I go on a mystery international bachelor party, destination unknown.
Really?
Yeah.
You just show up at the airport and...
Yep. Haley booked the ticket. They so my friends who I've done all my hockey travels with.
Yeah.
One lives in Finland, Henka, and then Scott, who lives in Mexico. They sort of plotted it alongside Haley.
Wow, cool.
Yeah. So I'll be gone and then the week after that, I have my actual bachelor party with like my high school friends and stuff.
Mm.
So the next 4 weeks will be a lot of traveling, but the second half of it will be more like relaxing, I think. Well,
Cool.
Even the driving from Florida is pretty chill, but I just have a bunch of projects to get finished
Before you go. Right.
Including this shoot in Colorado this week. But I'm not too concerned about it. I mean, we're prepped. I think it'll be fun.
Cool.
Yeah. Those tiny little socks you got on.
Yeah, thanks.
I don't think that was a compliment, Dr. Steve.
It was to me.
Those are the kind of socks those are like athletic, kind of low cut for athletes or something like that. No.
Oh, when my son left for college, he left a bunch of stocks, and I inherited a bunch of them. So
is he's not still in college? No, that was a while ago.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned school's almost over. I find I like the fact that you're in academia because I don't know anyone who teaches in college, and college is so fun. I'm always curious what it's like on the other side as a teacher.
Yeah.
But you flunked some kids. Finals came and went.
I don't think I flunked anybody. They flunked themselves.
Yeah. Have you ever had those conversations where they come in and they're like, "Hey, man, please don't flunk me"?
Yeah.
How do you handle that? You say, "You flunked yourself."
The grades fail you. I don't fail you. The grades fail you, right?
Yeah.
The grades don't suspend you, or I don't suspend you. The grades suspend you.
Are you aware of people who try to like play angles? Play the sympathy card or anything like that? Does that ever come up?
I'm sure it comes up, but what do you say when, like, my grandma died? Like, did she really die?
That's
really?
what I would say.
I want to see a death certificate. I don't.
Show me a selfie with you next to the casket. No,
right.
That would be inappropriate. But yeah.
It would be inappropriate.
I'm just, because I think to my collegiate career, I never really pushed that hard, but there were times where I'd be like, come on, like, give me a better grade, please.
Yeah. I'm 2 points away.
Yeah.
Do your work. I don't know. It's tough. I don't know.
Cold calculated Dr. Steve.
No,
all about
really.
the numbers.
Like, I'm incredibly forgiving and incredibly willing to, but to bend over and help, but there are deadlines, and I don't want to make more work for me either, or my teaching assistant. So,
And remind me, the majority, is it equally graduate students and undergrads?
Yeah, I usually teach one undergrad and a graduate class every semester, and then do my research on top of that.
Yep. The youth of America, fascinating. You get to experience them on a daily basis.
Yeah, they're great.
Are they?
Yeah.
That's good. People always say that kids are different from generation to generation. Millennials are characterized by X, Y, and Z. Gen Z is characterized by, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know if I ascribe to that. I feel like kids are more or less kids all the time,
There's certainly contextual factors, people in different generations grew up with different technologies and different information, geopolitical situations and stuff. So,
and then going to school during COVID, obviously that's a vastly different experience.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. On my end, last time we talked, I was super stressed out.
Yeah.
Things have improved. Is
that because of our incredible session?
I'm not a particularly religious person, so I suppose I could lie to you. But I don't think I'm going to lie to you. No, I don't know that it was our session. It's a very long, drawn-out insult. No, yeah, I think a lot of sort of discussing. I was just watching some clips from one of our last session where we talk about dissociation and dissociation.
Yeah.
That was super interesting. But again, I think sometimes it just takes me a while to talk about what's bothering me. But once I do, I feel better.
Yeah.
And also, too, you had mentioned, we had landed at this point of like, hey, maybe the stress I'm feeling is actually quite normal for me. Like, this is my body's natural reaction to things that are going on.
Yeah, right.
That doesn't mean that it's bad or that it is, I need to judge it or be ashamed of it or be afraid of it. It just
is what it is.
Yeah, much like you cough when you have a itchy throat or when you stub your toe, it hurts, but you don't say, oh my God, is this,
Right.
what does this mean? So that was very helpful. And then also, too, I think just being a little bit further down the road and having completed some stuff, like getting through the work.
Yeah, checking some boxes.
I did have an EMDR session, and I was real stressed. We actually we opted not to do the EMDR. She was like, do you feel like doing it today? I was like, I'm going to be honest with you. The idea of like doing work right now is a little bit overwhelming. So we just talked about the stress that I was feeling. And that was also very helpful because during that process, she asked me a ton of questions about like what I was feeling.
Yeah.
She's like, so tell me about, what the stress is. Like, what does it say to you? And I'm like, well, the voice I hear, the negative chatter is like, I'm going to fail. I'm going to mess things up. I'm going to torpedo my business. Things are going to go bad. Like that was the dread that I was carrying with me every day. And she was like, have you in the past historically ever delivered something and a client has been like, wow, this is really bad? Or have you ever had a negative outcome?
Uh-huh.
I was like, no, I never. She's like, so this fear that you have is not particularly realistic. And I was like, no, it really isn't. And I think going through that process was sort of calming for me because I realized like it wasn't necessarily the environment that was causing me to feel so like weighed down and overwhelmed. It was mainly the negative chatter that was going on in my head that was so exhausting.
Yeah.
And so we sort of talked about, well, where do I think that comes from? And I shared, I talked about how growing up as a kid, and like going to school and stuff, for a really long part of my developmental, life, I was under the impression that I was kind of stupid and that I wasn't particularly capable. So, and it wasn't until honestly I was about 20 that I started to realize, well, actually, wait, I'm pretty smart. I can accomplish things. So I think I continue to sometimes, when I'm stressed out, revert to that old way of thinking.
That old script. Yeah.
Yeah. And talking about that it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's been helpful. So all of those things sort of combined have left me feeling better. Although talking about it still is a little like uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Just to remind myself, like I haven't really thought about how stressed out I was, like 10 days ago or something like that. I've just sort of like, oh, I'm feeling better. That's great. Like I've started to feel like I can get back to my normal routine of like, oh, okay, wake up in the morning. Do I want to read? Like, do I want to journal? Do I want to meditate? My appetite's returned. Oh, the jaw thing.
Yeah. How about that?
So I went on muscle relaxers for 7 days, and those 7 days I had no pain. And then I went off of them, and it's knock on wood.
Nice.
Yeah. So I wondered if like I just needed a week to like be able to sleep and then maybe
reset.
Yeah. And then maybe I wasn't clenching as much. I don't know. But that's been super helpful to be able to sleep at night. And the more I look back on it, I think it just really was a ton of stress.
Yeah. Just kind of accumulating and kind of nipping at your heels the whole time.
And it was so fascinating how it manifested in like physical symptoms. Right? Because I was convinced that it was related to my filling, and so I was going to the dentist and I was going to the doctor, and it's like you assume stress couldn't cause physical pain. But it might have.
Yeah, right. Yeah, actually a good connection between stress and cortisol levels and physical pain.
Yeah, which even now that continues to be sort of mind-boggling to me because I always assume stress to be an emotional thing as opposed to a physical thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to get to like 2 weeks from now because then I'll be on sort of vacation mode, if you will, for a little bit of time. And I think that'll be awesome for me. I'm so looking forward to wherever it is that Scott's taking me. He keeps joking that it's, I told him, I was like, listen, here's my one rule. No like war-torn countries, like no active conflicts. And so he's been reminding me for the past month that Afghanistan's no longer an active conflict zone. So he keeps being like, Alex, do you want it? There's a couple of hotel options in Kabul. Do you want nicer? Or do you want, he keeps running with that joke. But I'm very excited to end up wherever it is that he's plotted and just be sitting somewhere and having, Scott's really good about, we're like-minded in that he got me on this North Korea trip. So like he's seen the world and he's all about perspective. So he's someone with whom I can have pretty like wide open conversations.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
It's good to have somebody like that in your life.
Yeah. Granted, he's a little bit more on the extreme side of the spectrum of like, when I was 18, I left home to start a hostel in Kenya and I got robbed at gunpoint. Like his stories are just,
he's seen some life.
He has experienced way too much life in my humble opinion. I prefer a little bit of shelter. He does not like it at all. Yeah. So how have you been?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Hanging in there.
That's good. Do you want to talk about it?
Not really.
Okay, cool.
I don't think I can afford your rate.
Yeah. Pretty pricey. So I think last time I chatted with you, I went to LA. I was talking about that. That was cool. I had some good meetings with people, and I have a friend who lives out there, and we had lunch, and he was telling me he is 4 weeks sober, or was at the time 4 weeks sober.
Yeah, cool.
And we're chatting. He's like, yeah, honestly, I've been listening to your podcast, and that like your journey with alcohol was like motivated me to, and I thought that was really cool. And I was like, the podcast, it's working, Dr. Steve. Yeah. I didn't want to text you. I wanted to tell you.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I thought that was really cool. And we talked about like mental health, and he shared a lot of stuff about, growing up and his experience with mental health and stuff like that. And it was cool. And that's why, I like the podcast, because I feel like it makes it easier to have those conversations with people. Because I feel like they're like, okay, I can have this conversation with Alex because, clearly
he's already putting his stuff out there.
Yeah. So I feel like it makes me a safer person to talk to, which is cool, because then I get to have these, meaningful mental health conversations.
Yeah.
And the more I think about that, I feel like this podcast is probably more effective in that regard. Maybe effective isn't the right word, but I think it's more relatable to millennials and maybe even older, because I get the sense that Gen Z, the conversation of mental health is much more open with them. I don't have a ton to base that on, but I do know that like for my generation, just based on my personal experience, there's still a lot of people who probably feel uncomfortable talking about it. So
yeah,
it's cool. I had another conversation with someone, and it appears, the podcast had a positive effect on them as well. So there
Another
were two
person.
Yeah, there were two instances.
Two people.
Yep. So it was cool.
Well, then I know I have people in my world have come to me and said things about the podcast.
Yeah.
Listening to it. So
yeah. And it would be interesting for me to so I can look at the data, right?
Yeah.
Of who's listening, mainly through Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that detail, and I look at the age groups. And so there is a portion of, I think it's like 18 to 22-year-olds or 18 to 24-year-olds who listen, and I'd love to sit down with them and be like, hey, does this strike you as particularly, not revealing, but do you feel like you get good exposure to therapy or mental health? Is it eye-opening, blah, blah, blah? Or if they'd be like, no, this is pretty, it's pretty standard. I consume content like this all the time. I'd be fascinated to hear that. So that trip went well. And I definitely would not want to live in LA, I'm pretty sure.
No way.
But it's also kind of tough. I had meetings lined up that fell through, and it's just exhausting to every time I go out there, I'm reminded that in terms of entertainment in that business, you really just have to prove to people why you're worth their time. Mm-hmm. And basically everyone defaults to it's the old saying, you're a nobody until you're a somebody. Mm-hmm. And I find that to be 100% true. Mm-hmm. And that is really exhausting. Okay, why am I cool or why am I interesting? And it's funny to interact with people who their reception to me ebbs and flows based on okay, have I done anything cool lately? Mm-hmm. And that can be sort of create pressure in terms of okay, what is my value? Am I interesting? Or, I haven't done anything interesting, quote unquote, in a while. So does that make me am I off my game? Am I no longer cool? I can't imagine existing in that bubble every day.
Yeah. Right.
Being an actor or something, being a celebrity, being a public figure, and your income being based on how cool you are, that would suck.
I would starve.
What is it? There it is. That's what I wanted to go for. Yeah. So yeah, things are better. I'm still a little. I think I'm still experiencing this because there's still things on my plate.
Yeah.
But man, it does feel a lot better.
Got to switch my position every now and then.
How are your knees doing?
I'm not out of the woods yet.
Okay. Well, is that why I figured that's what you repositioning for? Your knees?
No, just neck, looking through a microphone and.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Haley and I continue to house hunt, continue to plan our wedding. The house hunting is stressful, but the wedding planning is not. I'm pretty grateful that I feel like everyone I talk to, they're like, oh, those two things together are the most stressful things.
Yeah. And
I'm starting a business way more stressful, but Haley might disagree with me, but we've been, all things considered, pretty normal.
And those are good events, but they can still be stressful, right? There's a certain amount of stress with winning the lottery, for example. You can have good things happen to you, perhaps, and then they still bring a degree of stress, but there are things that you want to look forward to and things you plan for. And
I continue to be multiple times I've heard people respond with oh, you're trying to do both at the same time? That's really stressful. And I'm all things considered, not really.
Mm-hmm.
We're still we're looking to buy a house. There's a lot more stressful things that could be occurring. Mm-hmm. So I kind of yeah, that's, it has some stress, but all things considered, not too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's sort of the Alex update. mental health feels I'm on the mend. It's like I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm kind of starting to get a little excited. Excited for...
How will you know when you're in that light?
Because I'll just be chilling with Scott.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Who's Scott?
Scott is the dude who's planning my international mysterious bachelor party.
You're going to Topeka.
I have no idea. I bet you it's somewhere in Africa, is my guess. Or maybe, I'm guessing Africa. If it's like, I mean, this would be a great troll on his part, but if it's like Cleveland, Ohio, I'd be like,
yeah, we just lost listeners in Cleveland.
That's okay. That's okay. They'd probably, if they're true Ohioans, they'll laugh at that. Because they know. Everyone. Those are kind of the butt end to all the jokes. But yeah, I think I just know in terms of my outlook. When I'm stressed out, I tend to focus on negative things.
Oh, yeah?
Is that surprising?
Not really.
Yeah, okay.
So most people are probably like that. So you're a lot like
everybody,
every other human.
Yeah. And when I'm not stressed, so when I think of like what's the end of the tunnel going to look like, or the light at the end of the tunnel, I'll just be not so, I won't wake up being like, okay, what are all the things that could go wrong today? I'll just be like, okay, what are things that I feel like doing? Like I would say a week ago, I started thinking about music again. Like I used to write songs a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, man, how cool would it be if I wrote an album? Which I hadn't entertained that thought, and it had been a very, very, very long time. And I just find that when I have more like space, I just start to think about things that I enjoy doing again. And it's nice. Or I just have more optimism. Like, oh yeah, I could start this project. That would be cool. That would be fun. I could learn this thing, or I should start running again, or I should go back to the gym. What? Yeah.
Typical. Those are pretty typical thoughts, right?
Yep. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to be just nice and calm again.
How long will that last? Nice and calm before you get backed up with projects or other things knocking on your door.
To be determined. I think July will be. I'll probably have the month of June. Then
like that?
And then
chill.
Yep, July. I have the 3M Open, which is the annual golf tournament here.
Yeah,
we do work. We do like content and other content and stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's really cool. That's a little stressful just because everything has to happen in like a week. So it's like a very busy week.
Yeah.
And then I'll start to do like wedding showers and all that mumbo jumbo, and then I'll get married. But I don't think getting married is going to be too stressful. I guess maybe. It's just a party. I've never thrown such a big party, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be worried people have a good time, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. But I'll start pitching new projects again. And then I'm sure, hopefully I'll learn, hey, maybe stagger them a little bit. Don't try to do 3 in 1 month or 4 in 1 month.
Yeah.
That's sort of my key takeaway, I think. But it's sort of catch-22 because I'm stressed if I don't have any work. So I'm like aggressively seeking it out, right? Because it's a numbers game. Yeah. Cast a wide net. And then when you bring some of it in, you're like, oh, wait, I have to.
Now I got to do it.
Yeah, now I have to actually do these things. Uh-oh. So it's kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I'm sure I'm learning. I'm growing. That was another thing my EMDR lady said. She was like, do you enjoy the work that you're doing? And you and I talked about this. Yes, 100%. It's just uncomfortable to like have all these projects and stuff. She's like, well, yeah, growth, so you're experiencing growth. I was like, yes, objectively speaking, I'm out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
I just also happen to be like judging my experience with growth, and that's
the big thing for you. Yeah.
Oh, it's like getting mad at myself because after I work out, my muscles are sore.
Yeah.
Or like, oh gosh, I'm not working out hard enough. I'm doing it wrong. Where it's like, oh, this is just very normal.
Yeah. And it's what you bit off, like you put all the feelers out there to generate new leads and things like that. Now they're coming back and you got to deal with them.
And I think, and this has been something I've been gleaning from our work together too, which is like reminding myself that my experience is more often than not really par for the course, in the sense that like there's lots of other people. I'm not alone. Like, it doesn't mean I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah, right.
Just the experience of being a human.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sometimes hard to remember to remind myself of that, but I'm doing it more and more. So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I did have questions for you, if you're open to it.
Yeah.
I was talking to my friend who'd listened to the podcast where we talk about your religion, your Mormonism.
Yeah.
And he was like, I in the episode, you remember I said, I think you're the second person I've ever met.
Yeah.
He was like, I went to high school with a bunch of kids who were Mormons, and in the end, they tried to convert me because they wanted to save my soul. So be prepared for that. And I was like, I don't think Dr. Steve's going to try and convert me. So
or care about your soul.
So I wanted to ask you if you had any. Are you going to get to a point? I mean, you can't. That would be against your thing, wouldn't it? How does that work?
Yes, my what thing?
Your therapy, oath of
code of ethics. Right?
Yeah, code of ethics.
So I don't have an agenda in here. My agenda is to work with your agenda.
Is it weird though? Because if you care about me, his thing was like, when I was in high school, I become friends with these kids and they were like, listen, I care about you. I don't want your soul to be damned. Please. Yeah. Do you like?
I don't look at it that way. I don't look at your soul being damned.
Okay, cool. Because I would be like, it's pretty judgmental, Dr. Steve. That's the stuff that like I find super fascinating, but I also don't want to be rude by asking those kinds of questions, because I don't know if there's a polite or impolite way of asking them, being like, hey,
Yeah, it makes me wonder about your friend's idea of what therapy is. And of course, we have this is our podcast therapy, and so it's got all different kinds of levels to it. But yeah, it's not a place where I go out and proselytize, or I go out and try and convert people to my way of thinking.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to. And outside of here, like if you were a client and you came to me and said, I'm really curious about your religion, I would say, that's great. I can send you somewhere to go talk about that, but this is not the place where I'm going to do that with you. Even if you want to do it in here, that's not what I do in here. Yeah.
I think what makes me curious, and I think it's based on stereotypes, is like, so much like you use the analogy of like the lizard brain.
Yeah.
It sits, overrides.
Yeah.
I sort of assume people in
lizard brain is overridden by your neocortex,
there's like
the new brain. Yeah.
I think that when I interpret, like when I meet people who are like religious, I sort of look at it as like the reverse. Like they have the religion brain that goes over their, that overrides.
Yeah.
So
in what way? Like their religious tenets and beliefs kind of override every other thing that might come in?
Yep.
Everything's filtered through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Like when I was in North Korea, it's like you talk to people and they were super normal. Like you'd be having conversations, but then someone would bring up like the leader, and it was just like glorious leader, supreme leader, all hail leader. Like it's like a switch would flip kind of a thing. Not to make the analogy between Mormons
and North Korea.
This is why
the church does really well in North Korea. I don't even know if they're in North Korea, to be quite honest.
They do not allow religion of any kind.
Yeah. So if there's anything there, it's way underground.
Yeah, you can get in big trouble. In fact, a few of the Americans who were arrested over there, It's because they brought like Bibles.
Brought their Bible. And religious insignia.
They were trying to preach and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because I think rightly so, they see religion as a threat to their insular or insulated power in terms of like, because their leaders are religious symbols to them.
Yeah.
So it probably undermines.
Yeah.
Yeah, but...
well, did you have other questions?
I have a ton of questions, really? Dr. Steve. Yes, I have so many questions. But again, it's like,
So is it about my religious orientation, or do you have questions about the religion? And I do need to send you somewhere else. Like, hey,
no, zero. I mean, pure curiosity.
Yeah.
I have questions about how your Dr. Steve brain interacts with Mormon, in what Mormons believe.
Principles,
dogma, historical, this happened, this happened, this happened. This is our stance on this and this.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming the religion has absolutes in terms of like, this has to be true, and it's like, you clearly meet lots of people from different religions.
Yeah.
Like, how do you reconcile your religion with the existence of other religions?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite easy. There's a ton of different human beings with different experiences of the world.
Yeah. So you don't think that any one religion reigns supreme?
There's all kinds of claims out there about that.
Yeah. I know, which to me is like, woof. But yeah, I just don't want to ask questions where you're like, I can't answer that. Like, you can't be asking those questions, Alex. You're gonna get them.
I think so. So to me, I'm gonna bump the conversation up a bit and talk about, like the podcast is about helping people perhaps access mental health counseling or something like that, based on observing Alex. So Alex comes to therapy. He's got questions about his therapist. So you get to ask, right? We did this a couple sessions ago, and you were like, I don't know if I should ask this, but tell me about your religion. What are you, and then how does that? Now you want to go down deeper. So you did find out something about your therapist. And you want to go, okay, now that brings up all these questions for me. So there will come a point where I'll be like, so Alex, is this about my relationship with you? Is this about your mental health? Is this about your curiosity as to how Dr. Steve can navigate a belief system which may be in contrast or in opposition to other belief systems that govern my life? And, so I'm like, so is that really important? There will come a time when I'll say, why is this important to you, Alex? And what if you don't get the answer to your question? Or so as a therapist, I'm gonna at some point dig in. I'm comfortable with some degree of self-disclosure, but like I think I said before, this is a one-way street. Mm-hmm. The expectation is not that you find out a ton about me. It's that I find out about a ton about you, and position that with your presenting problem, the thing that you're going to counseling for. And if we get off track, like if you and I start talking hockey every time that we meet, then I'm being clouded. I need someone to say, hey, he's here to talk about his mental health, not to talk about hockey. Hey, the Stanley Finals are great, but that's not why he's there. So
yep. I hear that.
So will come a time that I'll say, ask anything you want, and then I will push back a little bit and say, what does this do for you? How is this important to our work?
And that's not because you're necessarily guarded or defensive.
Or don't want to answer the question, but there will come a time when I'll be like, okay, we're talking a lot about me and what, like if this is a trust thing, like if you see people who have a faith tradition as being kind of whack jobs or out of touch or however it is, there may come a time where I say, I may not be you may need to have somebody whose faith tradition or non-faith tradition is in more alignment with yours, because there will be some people out there who will say, I can't get my head around the fact that my therapist is Mormon, or I can't get my head around the fact that my therapist is fill in the blank, whatever it is.
Yes.
Gay, straight, white, black, like
a podcaster,
university professor,
University of Minnesota professor.
Uh-huh. He's got a Bucky paper up on the wall there for the University of Wisconsin. But it's fascinating to me. To me, I think one of the hallmarks of my success is the fact that that over the last couple of years, I might have clients back to back, and the client in the 9 o'clock hour is talking about how they can't stand the President Trump, and the client at the 10 o'clock hour.
Yeah.
And that person who says, I can't stand President Trump, is thinking I'm in alignment with them.
Yep.
And the person who comes in with a very different agenda says the opposite thing about the other party and thinks I'm in alignment with them. So to me, that's a marker of maybe a success in letting people be where they're at without feeling judged. And if I can bring that to therapy, you're not going to be judged and shamed for how you believe or think. You get to have your own beliefs in here, whether I agree with them or not.
I think this is a good place to leave people in suspense.
Dun, 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 dun.
Dun. And I think we're going to pick this back up in the next time we meet.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, everyone.
Unless I forget.
Unless you forget. I have a feeling.
Unless Steve Harvey is.
All right, everyone. Stay happy.
Stay tuned.
And stay tuned.